Good day, fellow citizens. Salibonani lonke, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to our discussion today. My name is Thabo Siziba on Asixoxeni. Let's talk with Usiziba. Today we are going to focus on our subject, the hot topic of our channel right now is building homes for maids and gardeners in Zimbabwe. This is a topic that has garnered a lot of interest from our community. Over 1,600 views in just the past day that this video has been uploaded. And it just goes to show us that this is a subject or a topic that many people are interested in because it affects them, especially as we strive to develop and to build wealth and to build homes for our families, for our children. All right, so I'm just going to dive straight into it. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you, as I always do, in order for this channel to grow and for us to continue having great content with more and more encouragement amongst each other, please hit that subscribe button, follow me, and also share me with your friends, share the channel with your friends. And let's continue to build our great home. All right, so there's a few things that come to light when I think about the issue of building a home in Zimbabwe, and I'm hoping that many of you watching or having this conversation with me through the comment section, which I would love to encourage you to please do comment, is planning or feeling the obligation to build a home in Zimbabwe, the root behind the thought for you to even think about, the idea of building a home in Zimbabwe. Why are you thinking about building or buying a home in Zimbabwe, establishing in Zimbabwe? Why are you thinking about that? And there are a few things that I think, personally, that I think, are very important for us to consider when we are when we are considering buying a home in Zimbabwe. First and foremost, I'll address the primary, consideration, because as you know, this topic or this subject is primarily relevant to you if you're a diaspora like myself. And I say that because there are many factors that affect your decision whether or not to buy a home or to build a home in Zimbabwe. It could be, your immigration status, where you are, whether you are a documented or undocumented individual or migrant. And in regards to that, furthermore, it could be, if you are a documented migrant, are you a permanent resident in the country where you live and work, or where you have a business? Are you a temporary resident, or are you a citizen? These factors are very important in you planning how you deal with the issue of building, how and why you decide to build or buy a home in Zimbabwe. And I'll tell you shortly why. First and foremost, if you're an undocumented resident, which I don't encourage because there are many channels in all countries that are available for people to document or to have themselves documented. Topic for another day. If you are unfortunately undocumented and you live in any country, obviously it just makes common sense, whether you're in South Africa or whether you're in Botswana, it makes just common sense that whichever way you are using to make money, whether, some people call it working under the table. I'm just being realistic here. Some people call it working for cash, working under the table and stuff like that. There is many of our Zimbabwean diaspora that are currently in South Africa for various reasons, legitimate or whichever, that are living in South Africa without documentation, where they are working in those farms or working, in those restaurants with documents that are not legitimate enough for them to be able, to establish themselves fully in South Africa in terms of probably buying a house, buying land, or whatever the case may be, establishing themselves partially and fully within the country of South Africa, where they may also have children. So in a situation like that, you probably will want to make sure that as quickly as you can, while you are making the money that you are making, that you take that money and make sure that you use it wisely to build or to establish yourself in Zimbabwe. Then there is the category of documented migrants. And that category is that of people that may be temporary residents, permanent resident, or citizens. If you're a temporary resident, that means that you are in that country probably, for any given period of time, depending on the contract that you have or the validity of the working permit that you have, the expiry of the working permit that you have. So if, for example, you are in South Africa, or you are in Canada, or in America, or in Abu Dhabi, wherever you are, and your work permit, is only for a 3-year contract or a 2-year contract, and it's subject to a non-renewal, then obviously, again, your primary objective is going to be, to make sure that as quickly as you can, with whatever funds you are earning or accumulating in your employment or in your business, you make sure that you invest it accordingly and smartly, in Zimbabwe or in your home country. Then comes the permanent resident. Permanent residents, obviously, it means that you have decided that you want to live indefinitely in the country where you are. So when you make a decision of whether or not to buy a home in Zimbabwe and you're a permanent resident, the next logical thing that you're going to be thinking of is, it will be based on your situation, your family situation. Do you have children? Don't you have children? If you don't have children, I'm assuming that then obviously it is the most immediate dependent family that it becomes your consideration and your attachment to your root or to your roots, your heritage, which could be the motivator for you to say, you know what, as much as I'm permanently living in America, I want to have a home in Africa. But if you're going to have a home in Africa, or sorry, in Zimbabwe, it is in Africa anyway, but if you're going to have a home in Zimbabwe and you have decided to take up permanent residence in America or in Botswana or in South Africa, then comes that subject which I discussed in the earlier video. What is the reality? What plan have you made to make sure that that home is a home that you're going to be living in at some point and living in it significantly so that it makes sense for you to have the home? Because remember, in the earlier video, what I was talking about was that there are many people who are building homes for gardeners and maids. The home remains there, available for, for the dwelling of the maids and the gardeners so that they can take care of it. And you only go there probably 20% of a full 20% of the year, if you're lucky enough to get that long of a vacation anyway. So in a situation like that, then obviously you have to start thinking, am I, on whether or not you're buying a home or a house, or you're building a home or a house in Zimbabweans, in Zimbabwe, is going to be motivated by you just buying it for your tenant, for your maid or your gardener, or you're going to buy it as an investment and have a long-term plan of how that home will make sense to you, if it is going to probably maybe be an asset that will build you an income and stuff like that. And then there is the category of permanent residents, where you have an immediate family in the form of children, a wife, children, a husband, children, in a situation like that, then what I would think would be the first logical step in the planning of whether or not you're going to buy a home in Zimbabwe would be, where is the reality of your children? Where is the reality of your most important, the most important people in your life, those that you are building the legacy and the generational wealth for? When you look 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line, and when you look at today, uzahlalisa abantu abakho emkhukhwini namhla uthi wena ubakhela indlu ekhaya kodwa abangasoke bafa bahlala kuyo? Are you going to build to rent some little basement for your children in America or in Britain, and squeeze your children in some one bedroom basement somewhere there, while you build a home in Zimbabwe, and you go there maybe 2 weeks a year, every 2 years or every 3 years? Does that make sense? Then now comes the reality of your children that I was talking about, that maybe at that point you are going to start thinking about, maybe the first thing, let me first make my own children comfortable where they are and build a home for my children in America. You build a home for my children, or buy a home for my children in America, in Canada, wherever you are. And then once that goal is achieved, then you can think about transporting or exporting, your financial resources to build an extension of your existence back home in Zimbabwe. And at that point, you are now thinking about probably building a holiday home where you're going to go there for the holidays, a month, 2 months, whatever the case may be. Or you are building a retirement home. For now, you can rent it out, have a servant's quarters or a worker's quarters built somewhere in the back of the main house, and have the main house rented, whether it's an Airbnb and whatever the case may be. Make that home something that generates an income for you. But in the meantime, have the maid probably be there just to to make sure that the yard has got proper security, or human security. And this applies also to permanent citizens. If you are a permanent citizen and a resident, if you are a citizen versus being a permanent resident, pretty much the decisions that you make of whether or not to buy a home in Zimbabwe, and why you should, and whether or not it even makes sense, can also be influenced by these factors of your family structure. So this, to me, are some of the points that I thought I would make on the follow-up video to what we were discussing, things that people need to consider. And it all boils down to us planning, you planning, from day one, why you'd need to build at home. You see, my motto, for example, is build, if you have children, build where your children live, not just where your roots began or where your ancestors sleep. As much as it is important to remember your roots, or to establish yourself where your roots are, or where your ancestors are, to keep that connection with your spiritual heritage, it is also important to ensure that you take into consideration your real-time reality for your children today. Are your children even probably going to be able to inherit that home down the line? You see, many times we think what we want is what our children are going to want, and sometimes it's not necessarily the fact. Your children may never even want to go and live in Zimbabwe, for all you know. But maybe your great-grandchildren may. So that's generational wealth. does not have to be something that you only think about for this current generation, and the next, but also for 3 generations from now. When I build my home now, I'm not only building it or buying it, for just my children. I'm buying it, with the thought of my grandchildren and also their children. At some point, somebody in the lineage, of the family will be interested and will take advantage of the, of the legacy or the wealth of the family. So, family, this has been a great conversation. As I always say, I don't want to take too long. Please subscribe to the channel, share the channel. Please do comment. Let me know what you think about, some of the points that I've just raised today. And let's avoid building just for the sake of it, building just so that maybe we can stay connected to our roots. Let's not fall into the trap of building because we are being pressured, to have something at home. It is great to have something at home, but plan first. Make sure you know why you are going to have that something at home. And in this case, of course, we are talking about having a home in Zimbabwe. And remember always that a home, first and foremost, is where you live. Please make yourself comfortable where you are, if you are permanent. And, then work on establishing, the extensions, where your roots, began, or where your roots or your heritage, originates from. All right. So thank you so much, fellow citizens. Again, this is Thabo Siziba Asixoxeni with uSiziba. Please comment, subscribe, share. Let's see if there's any more ideas that we can share together here. Thank you. Have a great time.